Okay, so good morning to everyone. I wanted to start with a Devat Torah that my husband um, came up with this week, total original. But before I start with his Devat Torah, I want to start with an avodah that I did on myself. I actually had two avodah. I have to say, I had many avodah this past week, especially working high intensity with the bar mitzvahs that I was doing for the past month and a half. So many avodah came up. But I want to start with one avodah. I'm going to go to Ralph's Devat Torah, and then I'm going to go to another even bigger avodah. The second avodah that I'm going to talk about is the fact that every time I have stress in my life, I break out in herpes, I become sick, and there's a lot of anger that comes up in me as I do my work if things don't function the way I want to. And I'm going to talk about it. I want to speak first about a small avodah, Devat Torah, the big avodah. So last week, this is like the end of the year, and my granddaughter Ayelet Chen, she was having at the end of the year party, and it was like a graduation, and they finished the chumash, and it was like a big to do. I love her school. Her school is like a Montessori Rudolf Steiner school, which they do everything by hand. Like they learn how to weave, and they crochet their own flute cover, and they learn how to do mosaics, and with that they learn math, and everything is done through natural. They learn how to do macrame through natural chomarim, which means like natural substances, and they learn Torah in that way, and they learn math and history and science in that way also. And it's a really beautiful school that anytime that there's something, I run to it. So the problem is that there are many little children that come to these events with the mother, and unless you're sitting in the front row, you really can't see much because we're not sitting like in a stadium style. It's like just rows one after the other. So I told Malka, let's go early and catch a seat front row. And so I have to do something over here, which when I talk, David downloads these, and when I talk, David says, put myself in the front as opposed to someone else being in the spotlight for everyone. High self. I don't know how to do this. I don't know why I'm in the periphery, and I don't know how to bring myself to the front. Okay, whatever. Someone's gonna have to teach me how to do that. So I told Malka, let's go early. We're gonna catch front row seats, and that's it. So Malka said, perfect. We'll catch front row seat. And also my mother-in-law wants to come. My mother, like my consuegra, her name is Colette. So we'll catch 3 seats in the front. I told her, you know what, let me go. I'll catch the 2 seats and you'll come just later, which is what I did. People that know me know that I love to get front row seats, and I'm willing to come earlier to do it. Get there, I get 3 seats for me, for Malka, for Colette, and we are sitting down, and then Colette is not coming. And people are coming up to us and saying, could we take the spot? Could we take the spot? And we're saying, no, we saved it, we're saving it. But there came a point that the show started that we couldn't, that I felt uncomfortable saving it. And the next woman that came with like another 2 children and asked, could I sit there? Because the show started already. I let her sit. I said, fine, you can sit there. And then I told myself, what am I going to do when Colette comes? And I said, I am not going to get up when she comes. Excuse me. I'm sorry. And Colette comes, and I found myself, sure enough, she's looking for us, and she catches our eye, and she walks over to us. And I found myself getting up and giving her my seat, and she's sitting near Malka, and I go to the back of the room, and I'm trying to figure a way how to watch my granddaughter throughout all the forest of people that are standing there. And I am totally upset and not able to see well, and asking myself, how did I find myself in this situation? So the first thing we need to realize when we are trying to manage any kind of situation, we need to ask ourselves, what is my description right? What is my description when I come into a situation? What was my description at that point? So my description at that point was a grandmother coming to watch her granddaughter. That was my description. I was a grandmother coming to watch my granddaughter. Now, how in the world did I end up becoming a grandmother who came to watch her granddaughter, but was moved to the last, but was watching her from the last rows when I was the first one coming there and the first one to catch seats, to get a good spot. And that was because when I say that was my description in Hebrew, a description is called Hagdara. Hagdara. That's my description. Hagdara also means gader. It means a fence. Description and fence in Israel, in Hebrew, comes from the same word. It's because I left my Hagdara, I left my fence, and I went into someone else's fence. I want us to all be able to imagine everyone around us, and everyone has a gader, a fence around them. And the only one we need to take charge of, our description, our Hagdara, our gader, we need to take charge of our own. We can't take charge of anyone else's description. Everyone else is going to describe themselves any way that they want to. We have no control over it. But I went out of my description. I went out of my fence. And what did I do? I went into my consuegros fence. What does it mean going to my consuegros fence? It means, oh, it's not nice. She's a pediatrician. She had an emergency. Now she's going to stand in the back. Now she's not going to see. I'm going to give her my place, right? It's me going into someone else's head. It means that I'm going out of my description. And then I get bummed out that I'm not doing what I want to do. How do I know that I came out of my description? How do I know that I stepped out of my fence? Also, I could have gone, there are many different ways to get out of our fence. One of them is, oh, I should be doing this. Oh, this is what's expected of me. All these words make us go out of our description, make us go out of our fence also. And how do I know that I came out of my fence and out of my description? It's because I wasn't happy about it. Because when Colette came, and she was also looking for a place to sit, and she was surprised that there was no, also, I came out of my fence 2 times. One is when the mother came to me and said, could I sit down there? I could have very well said, no, it's reserved for someone. It's reserved for my consuegro. It's reserved for Malka's mother-in-law. But instead I was thinking to myself, oh, she has 2 children. What is, we're Stam holding this. What is everyone going to think? What are they going to do? Why should she? Why should they? All these kind of thoughts are us leaving our fence. And we're going into someone else's mind. We're trying to control. What are they going to think? What are they going to say? How should it be? What are they going to do? And all that is going out of my fence. This is not nice. Oh, it's et cetera, et cetera. So the reason I know that I came out of my fence in my description is because I wasn't happy about it. Because at that minute, I could have been in a different description. I could have been from a grandmother that is coming to watch her granddaughter perform. I could have been a consuegro that is helping out her consuegro, right? I could have been in that description. Now, if I wanted to be in that description, that's my new identity. And if that's my new identity and I take it, then I'm happy about it. Then it fills me with fulfillment, with joy, with pride. I didn't feel any of that. And that's a great indication that we stepped out of our bounds, that we entered someone else's fence. And we are not allowed to enter anyone else's fence because, as we learned before, we need to give makom, we need to give space and kavod and respect to everyone and their boundaries. Now, we need to be able to do that because it's the only way to bringing Hashem between me and the other person, between me and anyone else on this planet, giving them that space, giving them that kavod, that honor. Now, what would have happened, let's say, if we didn't get up, I didn't get up? It would have necessitated my consuegro, who would have wanted to find a nice spot, to try to figure out what to do. It would have given Hashem space for him to do what he needs to do in order to find her a place. It would have it would have meant that people, it also would have meant that, let's say, the consuegro might next time decide to take off more time from her practice and come earlier. And or really, it could have been that she would have been happy in the back seat. I don't even know. But because I ripped down my fence, went into someone else's fence, I didn't have a chance to find all that out. The only thing I had a chance to find out is that I was in the back row. I was miserable. I couldn't see my granddaughter, and it was totally not what I signed up for. I didn't want to be in the description of a consuegro finding her consuegro a place. I didn't. If I wanted to change my description, I would have been happy about it. That would have made me happy. At that point, I wasn't ready to change my description. And at that point, I turned myself into a martyr, which is something that Hashem totally doesn't want us to be or do. He wants us to do chesed wholeheartedly. He wants us to be in our description. He wants us to be able to give it with a full heart, with happiness. And if we're not going to do it with that, don't do it. Because there's nowhere that it says that I need to do chesed with someone else at my expense. I don't have to do chesed for someone else at my expense. And my expense means that me sitting down over there meant me enjoying it. And that was doing a chesed with myself. Instead, I went out of myself. I did a chesed to someone else. And the reason I know that it was worthless was because I wasn't happy with it. Okay, so that was my first avodah, and I have to say that was a small avodah that I had this year. We are in Rosh Chodesh Tammuz today, and in the parasha in Israel, I think in the United States, we might be like a week behind, but it is the parasha of where the spies go, sorry, not about the spies, where the spies come back and actually the Jews, Bnei Israel, get 40 years in the desert, and they realize that they're not coming into Eretz Israel. And then they reach a place where they don't have water. And they come and they complain. And they complain, and Hashem says, speak to the rock. And before they don't speak to the rock, because they end up hitting the rock, Moshe tells Bnei Israel, Hamin Hasela hazeh notzi lachem mayim. Do you think that we're going to take water out of this rock? And instead of talking to the rock, he hits it. And at that point, Hashem tells Moshe, you will not be able to go into Eretz Israel, not you and not Aharon. And he tells them this pasuk, Ya'an asher lo ha'emantem bi, because you did not believe in me, to lehakdisheni, to make me, like, to glorify me in the eyes of Bnei Israel, you're not going to go into Eretz Israel. Now, how can Hashem say something like that? Because Moshe, there's no one more than Moshe that believed in him, and there wasn't a bigger Navi than Moshe. How can he tell Moshe, you didn't believe in me and you didn't glorify myself in Bnei Israel's eyes? But what Hashem was trying to tell Moshe told Bnei Israel, do you think I'm going to take water out of this rock? And it was like a rhetorical and almost a little bit of a sarcastic question. You think I'm going to do it? Because the very apparent fact is, no, I'm not going to do it. It's Hashem that's going to do it. It's not me. It's Moshe taking the water out of the rock. And Moshe was put in a position where he was able to glorify God's name and say, it says my internet connection is unstable. I hope you guys can still hear me. Instead of glorifying Hashem's name, he didn't make it clear that what was happening is from Hashem. And there's a pasuk in Hallel that we say today that it's Rosh Chodesh. Me'et Hashem haytazot niflat be'enenu. This was from God, and it was niflat be'enenu. It was like unbelievable in our eyes. It was baffling for us. This was from Hashem because it was baffling for us. And Ralph was saying, let's take this pasuk and flip it over and say, anything in this world that's baffling for us, it's from Hashem. And we need to be able to realize it. And what Hashem wanted Moshe to do is tell Am Yisrael, this is something that's out of the ordinary. It's something miraculous. Of course, it's from Hashem, right? Anything. So now I want to take it into both ways. First of all, when anything good happens to us, good in a way that, oh my God, it's baffling how things pull together. It's Me'et Hashem. And sometimes we even see things that are baffling, that are something that we struggle with, that we look at as bad. There's no such thing as good or bad, okay? There's just facts on the ground. There's no such, like, when things happen that are baffling, and I'm not calling it good, I'm not calling it bad, it's from Hashem. It's from Hashem. It's all from Him. We had a driver in this past bar mitzvah, and one of the days he told me, listen, I can't do the nighttime run because I need to go home, and we're having an askara and we're saying Kidush. So I asked him, who passed away? And he said, you're not going to believe it, but 10 years ago exactly, my father was 60 years old in Kolel, had a aneurysm, and he passed away. And an hour before that, my brother, who's 16 years old, was in bed, and he died in bed. Both of them died. And that's a situation. And so he said, 10 years passed, and I need to go say Kidush for them. That's a situation where you look at it and it's just baffling. And it's baffling, and it's from Hashem. It's from Hashem. There's nothing, and when we know it's from Hashem, we know that it's something on our journey that we need to deal with. It's something that was put on our path so that we could grow from. It's something specifically tailor-made for us. So the reason Moshe did not get into Eretz Yisrael is because he wasn't able to say to Bnei Israel flat out, not, do you think I'm going to take water out of this rock, for them to understand that it was Hashem? But he wasn't able to say flat out, only Hashem is going to be able to take water out of this rock, and everything is from Him. So I want us, like, when we're learning this kind of teaching, I want us to take this and this concept, incorporate into our avodah, to know that Me'et Hashem, this is all from Hashem, and it could be baffling in our eyes, and we could look at it with wonderment, and it could cause us pain or it could cause us happiness, but it's all from Hashem. And it's what I need to grow from. Before I go to the big avodah that I try to do on myself, or that I'm in the process of doing on myself, and God willing, I have more bar mitzvahs coming up, so I'm going to have a chance to, to practice it. For anyone that plan bar mitzvahs, the people coming from out of the country, and they come to Israel, and then everything, hopefully, after a lot of intensive planning and a lot of paying attention to details, should go very smoothly. Not always up to me, most of the time up to Hashem, or if I was at a high level, I'd say all the time it was up to Hashem, and we'll deal with that in a minute. Okay, I want to just bring an avodah that I did with a friend, which really shows us about how things are put in our path for us to grow from. Everything is an opportunity for us to grow. I had a conversation with a friend that was dealing with a lot of anger. I was telling her anger is a divine indication that something is awry, and we need to stop and put our ways, like reroute ourselves. Anger is an indication that we need to reroute. So now when we ignore the anger, it's like we're taking a valuable commodity and we're refusing to use it. We have a valuable commodity in our life, and that's anger. And it's very good that the anger comes up, because then we're able to see where are we not living authentically. So this is going to connect. I have a friend, her name is Ori, and she also got married when she was young. Not as young as me, she got married when she was 20. And before she was married, she was very environmentally aware, and she signed up for Greenpeace. If anyone knows, they're like an organization that takes care of the environment, especially in the oceans, cleaning up the oceans. And she gave a monthly subscription to Greenpeace because she believed in what they were doing, and she was active in that. Now she got married at 20 to a family who saw Greenpeace as the far radical left, and when they found out that she subscribed to Greenpeace, they started to laugh and like, could you believe? And she's so naive, and she's flushing her money down the toilet, and what is she doing with it? And my friend Ori felt extremely insecure. She was very embarrassed. She was very hurt, and she just locked it in. She locked it in. She didn't address it. But until 35 years later, and this is the avodah we're doing, which she was sitting around her in-laws table, and all the cousins were sitting, and someone was made fun of because also they're like left-wing, bleeding heart liberal kind of a thing, nothing to do with ecology or whatever. And they brought up the fact, do you remember that our Reed also signed up for Greenpeace? No wonder that, this child of her also is a left-wing radical. And she felt that old anger burning up in her. And when she was talking to me, she told me, like, how in the world did I, an educated young woman, who went to like a really amazing university, right? Went to the Technion, and married a guy who didn't appreciate not the environment, doesn't appreciate literature. She was telling me, it's totally baffling to me. How did we end up together? Well, what am I doing with this family? And the minute something is totally baffling, as we said before, I told her, Ori, this is Me'et Hashem. This was totally from him. Now, Hashem put us with the husband that he did because he has a journey planned for us. He wants us to be able to fix ourselves. And only with the husband that we have are we going to be able to deal with our insecurities, or we're going to be able to deal with with any kind of issues. For this friend or me, it was totally dealing with insecurity. Because if she felt very secure about supporting Greenpeace, even at this age of 55, right? At the age of 55, if she felt secure that she supported Greenpeace, nothing that they would say would move her. In other words, they don't have the power to hurt her. They're saying their opinion. Their opinion, Greenpeace is a waste of time. Now, the anger for her means, as we said, it's a rare commodity. And for her, she needs to look into it and see if this is something she still believes in, if this is still of value, if this is important to her. And her avodah is to realize that in God's world, there's multiple of opinions. They're allowed to have their opinion. There is kavod and makom for their opinion. And there's kavod and makom for her opinion. And her avodah is to be able to realize that in God's world, there's kavod and makom for everything. It's not it's either them, they're right, and I'm wrong. Or if I'm wrong, if I'm right, they're wrong. Or if they're right, I'm wrong. No. There's room for multiple opinions. There's room for multiple ideas. There's room to be able to support multiple of organizations, because God's world is endless. And once she's able to clarify that for herself and take on the knowledge that there is a place and makom and kavod for multiple of everything, then she could be at peace. Also with herself, also with her in-laws, also with her husband, right? So Hashem put our husbands here in our journey for us to discover ourselves, to grow from an insecure to a competent, confident young woman. And it's in our ability not to be hurt. Being hurt is a decision that I make based on a story that I tell myself. But we don't have to choose to tell a story that will hurt me. Like the story that she chose to tell herself is that they belittled me, they didn't consider me, they disrespected me, there was a word that she used actually. It was stronger than belittle. They like embarrassed me, like a word that comes like
ridiculed.
What?
Ridiculed.
More than ridiculed.
Mocked.
Yeah, they mocked. Yes, they mocked. Right, they mocked. Like she said that as them mocking her. Now, she could have totally told herself a different story. She could have said, I just came into a family of people who believe that all the money that we have means needs to go to education. It actually happens, like the family does believe that education is the most important thing in the world, and money should go to Jewish children. That's where the money should go to. So she actually married into a family that has other values and has very important values. And she just needed to be able to realize that her value is important and it's good and it has a place in Hashem's world. And their value is very good and it has a makom and kavod in Hashem's world. No one was trying to hurt her. No one was trying to take anything away from her. Everyone, they were just trying to voice their opinion and their, where they decide to put their money. And at that point, she was too young to understand it. But later on, when it came up, her anger at them, because she was triggered by the fact that they put down one of her children, that trigger is important to visit again, to visit and revisit and figure out what is going on. What just happened here? Why did I react in this way? And where is my avodah? So all of us, we don't need, I'm going to just bring another example that I've brought before, just in case we missed it. It's a big example in my life. When my grandfather passed away, so he gave the money only to the grandchildren who went to Haredi education. And so it basically was that I was the only one that didn't get anything from my grandfather's inheritance. Now, I could say a story to myself about he didn't like me, he was closed-minded, he didn't, was very narrow, et cetera, et cetera. I could tell that story. And, I'm the only one that didn't get, Hazit me, why me, only me, blah, blah, blah. I could have gone on and on. And I could have created myself into a victim by telling myself this story. However, I chose to actually tell another story. I chose to see my grandfather as someone who had very strong values and ideals, and someone who was willing to go all the way, even to the extent of cutting me out and knowing that it was going to hurt, but being resolved to not caring what I thought, but sticking with his values and his ideals all the way. And I have to tell you that aspect of him is also in me. And that's what allowed me, let's say, now that we're getting to, I think, the 16th anniversary of Gush Katif, that is something that made me go down there and be there and watch as people were being expelled from their homes and try to help them. And it's like I wasn't willing to sit down in my home. I went all the way. And that's an aspect of his personality that I also have and value, and I'm glad that I have. It came out in this way. Mine comes out in that way. But I feel like I took my grandfather's Torah and I implemented it in my life. Now, I can choose. It's in my hand to choose the story that will empower me, or I could choose a story that will deplete me of all strength, which is in, I think, last week's parasha or 2 weeks ago parasha, what the Meraglim decided to do. 12 went. 10 came back and they decided to tell us a story that's very depleting. You see the giant grapes? They're meant for giant people and we're not going to be able to. And it's a horror story. And as opposed to, everyone saw the same thing. The other two Meraglim who ended up being the only ones that were allowed into the land, it's because they were able to tell a story that was empowering, that was encouraging, that was building, that took them to a higher place, literally. Took them to a higher place because they were the only ones that were allowed to come into Eretz Yisrael. To get to the promised land, we need to create stories that will empower us. And when I say get into the promised land, I don't mean Eretz Yisrael. I mean each one of us has a promised land that we want to get into. And the only way we can get into it is if we spin the stories that will build us as opposed to push us down. A lot of times in Michal Peritz's class, women come, hold on, let me just put on a fan here a second. A lot of times they'll tell a story and the story is not only the facts, it's also the interpretation. Just like my friend Ori, they belittled me, they put me down, they mowed me over. Those are all interpretations. And Michal Peretz asks, when you tell this story, how does it make you feel? Someone goes, the story makes me feel terrible. I said, why would you want to make yourself feel terrible? Why would you ever want to make a story that will make you feel terrible? Why do we want to abuse ourselves in that way? We actually don't. So we're going to try to really get into our promised land and create stories that we will have a happy time living with them. Okay, I'm stopping right now. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. No questions? I'll continue. Okay, so now my big avodah and and I'm gonna take you on my path because this is something that I'm gonna be dealing with the next year. This is something that I want to take on myself for the next year. Okay, so usually when I get a bar mitzvah, what I like to do is to plan it big to small, like first the large things, then we go down to the small details. And a week before the bar mitzvah happens, I call every one of my venues and I tell them, you remember next week we have an event and this is what we need and this is what we discussed, and going down into the small details because I would like things to go as smooth and flawless as possible. I want things to, now why do I want that? First of all, people are paying a lot of money to come, and they're paying a lot of money because they want to have a very like smooth landing, and from one thing to the next, everything, all the details to fall into place, and for there not to be any glitches, right? They don't want any glitches, and that's why they hire me. So now I make all these phone calls, and I get, and I try to be very detailed when I make the phone calls, because my biggest basta, and basta is my biggest bummer. My biggest bummer is, like, let's say, as an example, I got them a VIP the first day, and I tell the VIP, I send them, this is the flight number, this is when they're arriving, this we need to have a van, and they're going to this hotel. Bye, hon. You're going to shul? Bye. And my biggest bummer is the VIP screws up, and then the first thing that they see when they come to Israel is so-called a screw up that I did, which has nothing to do with me. It was the VIP that did it, but it doesn't matter because I'm the one that hired the VIP. So any glitches that happen along the way reflect upon me. So I try as hard as possible to be able to take care of all the little details so that at least in the beginning days, no glitches will happen, so it doesn't reflect bad on me. And what I found is that Israel is bombarded with 2 million. Ben Gurion Airport had 2 million people go in and out. Is this past June, 2 million people. They have never had, just because of COVID and everyone wanting to come in, and all Israelis that haven't been out of the country for 2.5 years, everyone wants to go. That kind of number never existed in Jewish history. 2 million people in Ben Gurion Airport. And the VIP couldn't handle the influx. And sure enough, right when they landed, there was screw-ups with the VIP. And I was fuming. And then the trip begins, and they also wanted a security guard. And I told the security guard to be there 7:30. The security guard was there 7:45, and I flipped out. I tell you to be here at 7:30. You're getting paid good money. You have to be here at 7:30. I say 7:30. You be here at 7:15. It is I do not accept that you were late. I freaked out. And who was the security guard? The security guard was my son and his friend who do security. And my son didn't recognize. He never saw me like that. He never saw me flipped out like that. And he immediately said, "I apologize. I'm sorry. We're going to get there in 10 minutes." Because at 7:30, he wasn't there. That's why I made the phone call. We'll be there in 10 minutes. I said 10 minutes is not good enough. You were supposed to be here. But okay, whatever. Anyway, I hung up and I continued steaming inside. And I started leaving scathing voice messages that I deleted one after the other. Finally, the fourth message I left, and it was, Shalom, this is unacceptable. I expect you to be responsible. I trusted you. I worked very hard to do this bar mitzvah. You not being on time makes me look bad. Why should I look bad when you were the one? Why should I look bad because you're late? You're getting paid good money. You need to be. Anyway, I sent that one. He was totally shaken, but he didn't show it. He called up Ralph and he goes, Abba, you need to calm down. Like, what is the story? Ralph was like, I'm not going there. And I realized that there's something that I am not doing right. There's something awry over there. And I don't want to, and of course, at the ends of the bar mitzvah, I have herpes. Like I break out. Literally, all my stress bursts out of through my lips. Now, where is my avodah here? So I'm just starting to make my way in this jungle of avodah that I need to do. But this is the direction that I want to take. I am in a description of an event planner. And as my description of an event planner, I need to make things very clear to the people around me in very, very small increments. One of the things that I might need to do, also another thing, the bus driver, this is another thing I freaked out for. I said a couple of times, bus, we want to, the bus driver needs to be pleasant and nice because some bus drivers will carp and snipe. And the bus had a smell of cigarette smoke. So I freaked out from that also. Okay, so one of the things I need to do is I need to speak to all my suppliers and say, this is what I expect. And if my expectations are not met, then the payment will not be made. There won't be payment. If, let's say, the bus is not good, get me another bus and I'm not paying you for that day. Or if, hi, who's it? Oh. Hi, Tal. If, I'll give an example. There's a woman that watches, that has a daycare center, and she tells the mothers at the beginning of the year, if you're 5 minutes late to come to the daycare center, it's $5. If you're 10 minutes late, it's $50. If you're 15 minutes late, and so on and so forth. And then there's no more discussion about it. In other words, we have to make everything very clear beforehand. That's what I need to do, to make everything. And that's part of my description as an event planner, to make everything very clear. And also another thing is I can do as much as I can towards something, but I have no control of the result. I have no control of the result at the end of the day. The results are not in my hands. And I have to realize that, hey, hi, Hamudi. I have to realize that there are things that are beyond my control and I need to relinquish it to Hashem. And all the thought of, now what are people going to say? And what are people going to think? And they're going to go back and they're going to say that I didn't do this and I did do that, et cetera, et cetera. All that is me worrying about, am I going to have another job? Am I going to be able to make a living? Am I going to have a good name? Am I not going to have a good name? But really all of that is in God's hand. This is me going out of my description, of my fence, and going into other people's head. What are they going to think? What are they going to say? What are they going to do when they go back? And it really is in God's hands. It's not in my hands. It's up to me to do the best that I can, to bring a lot of clarity. The results are not up to me. If I am able to hold that in my head, that the results are not in my hands, it will relinquish a lot of stress from my life. So we're not responsible for the results. The results are in Hashem's hands. So my avodah is multifaceted over here. I know it's something that I've struggled with for 10 years, because every time after bar mitzvah, I have herpes. I feel weak. I feel depleted. It was as if I hold myself to high standards and there's a lot of stress and there's a release. And then I want my job to enliven me, to make me feel more alive, to make me feel more potent, more happy, more powerful, as opposed to feeling like all the oxygen was taken out of me. Okay, I am going to pause recording. Okay, so there's a way of saying things that is not, that is just a strong place within us, that when we say it, there's no other way to take it but to do it. It has to do with our inner conviction and our way of presenting it, because as if there's no other way. But we're not doing it because we want to control anyone or because we want to show who's the boss. We're doing it because we want things to function in a way that's respectable, in a way that's respectful. Okay, and I want to give another example. I'm going to give an example. In my house, when my kids were younger, in the winter, I found that before Shabbat, everyone would take a shower in the 2 hours before Shabbat, and inevitably I didn't have hot water. And I realized that we need, in order to make things work, we needed to divide the people, because the water tanks in Israel are very small and they don't hold so much hot water. That we need to divide the people, like between ages 0 and 5 need to shower between 1 and 2. Ages 5 to 15 needed to shower between 2 and 3. And at 3 o'clock is mommy and daddy's time to shower. Okay, now if the time went, you lost your opportunity to shower, and then you can shower after Ima and Abba shower. Okay, then you could have your time to shower. Now, what the rule is meant for us to be able to live harmoniously and well together. Now, it has to be said firmly and clearly once, and then the result is not in our hands. And then we need to ask ourselves the following question: what do I want to do about it? The grandchild was fed out of the high chair against your wishes, and there's a mess. And now what do I want to do about it? My ratzon is to have a clean house. I go and I clean it. And a conversation at a later date, at a much later date, could be broached and approached to be said, you know, I requested this and this for this. I requested babies in high chairs for this and this reason. I'm wondering what was hard for you about it, right? Because when we lay down a rule, or when I tell my people, like, I need things to flow very seamlessly, very, like, I need things to go very smoothly, right? I want things to go very smoothly. And this is what we're going to be getting. If it goes smoothly, there's going to be a tip. If there's going to be a glitch over here, then there's going to be a penalty. It's not me being mean. It's actually me trying to have a value of mine met. Trying to, like the day school teacher, that when you're 5 minutes late, it's $5, and 10 minutes late, it's $50. It's not trying to stick it to you. It's trying to stay within. She's trying to maintain kavod and makom for herself, because when 1 o'clock comes, she wants to be there for her children, and she's trying to create kavod and makom for herself. So I think there's a way to do it, and which creates kavod and makom for yourself. But there's also something, there's an inner core strength in us that we need to access when we make those rules, that it's like almost, I'm going to say this and it's going to sound very harsh, but there are some women who are abused physically, and there are some women that could never be abused physically. Behind and believing in this value that you're trying to bring across. I'm putting myself on pause 1 second. So the story that I told like a week ago brought a huge storm of interaction in a small chat that we have on WhatsApp. It's called like doing avodah. And the story was about the husband that came home from shul, and he didn't, and his wife was cutting a salad in the kitchen, and he started to say Kidush, and she was very hurt, etc. And everyone, I want to just bring up the chat 1 second. I'm bringing up the chat 1 minute. Hold on 1 second. Okay. I just want to read what woman Hashem. I'm going to it. Okay. Good. Okay, great. Okay. So this is what somebody wrote. I don't understand the husband who didn't call his wife for Kidush and just started. What's the reason he would do such a thing? It's very hard for me to understand. How was that right? Even though Michal said she should have just come in there to listen, it's not respectful of him to do that as a husband. She shouldn't she say anything to him, right? And then someone else wrote, it bothered me as well. At the heart of Shabbat is family. So what's doing Kiddush alone accomplishing? I hear you about respect, and still it was hard for everyone to understand. And another was written, we're supposed to worry about ourselves first, yes, but shouldn't we also try to be caring and kind and help each other too? People together could accomplish more, to be representatives for our children, to be a kind, sensitive, caring, loving couple. Thank you. Okay, so I want to stop with this, and I want to go back to it and delve into it a little bit more deeper. And I have to say something really very honestly. A half a year, the same thing happened to me. And I didn't drop my knife and come in. I was actually very fuming and angry, and I ended up talking about it with my husband, very, very strong words. And when I was, at the end of the day, I was trying to understand him, and I'm going to say what, his point of view was. But I want to say that the avodah that needs to be done. Okay, Barbara, that was you, and I just muted you. I'm sorry. I hope you didn't want to talk, but just there was a lot of noise in the background. Okay, so like just to be very open and upfront, it was a situation that I encountered, and I didn't handle it in the way of an avodah that needed to happen, which is something that I am handling it now, but then I didn't. Okay, so I remember, like Adele told me, yeah, Ima, do you remember that happened? Yes, I do remember it happened to me. Okay, so first I want to say that when it happened to me, Ralph came home, the kids, like the little kids were all around, and he was trying to, get everyone to the table, and not everyone was listening, and I was actually cutting a salad in the kitchen, and he just started to say, Shalom Aleichem, without calling me in and anything like that. And that's what triggered me and ticked me off. And afterwards, when we spoke about it, he said, listen, you just need to realize that the whole Friday I didn't eat, and I'm really hungry, and I went to shul, and I spoke, and I was with people. And I really, when I come home, I just want to say Kidush, and I want to eat right away. I don't want to wait, and I don't want to gather everyone. And I think just by me saying Kidush, it's going to gather everyone. So that's what he was trying to say about his, his point of view. Now, I want to take this a step further, right? We have a picture in our heads. Our husband should wait for his wife. A husband should be considerate. A husband should respect. It's a picture in my head. My child should call up every once in a while. My mother should do this and that for me. My mother should babysit for me. My mother should, when I give birth, be there for me. It's a picture we have ingrained in our head. And once we have this picture in our head, when something else happens, we are unable to accept it. It's like this picture is in our head and we're worshiping this picture. And we think that this picture is etched in stone, and this is how this world is supposed to be. Now, however, God puts us in front of a different reality, right? The reality that Hashem put us in front of is a husband that didn't wait, is a child that doesn't call, it's a mother that doesn't cook. All these are the realities that we have in front of us. Now, do I want to worship the picture that I have in my head, or do I deal with the reality that Hashem put in front of me? What do I want to do about it? I have to see, when I'm chopping up the salad and I hear Kidush, I need to think to myself, do I want to hear Kidush from my husband? Yes. Now, stop with he should, he could, he's supposed to. What we have now is from Hashem, and that is the husband that started Kidush. I put my knife down and I go in. Or I think to myself, I want to finish chopping up the salad. I'll let him say the Kidush, and then I'll make my own Kidush. And there are 10 other options of what I could do. I'm not really interested in my husband. He's not the issue here, right? I don't want from him. I don't want to educate him. I don't want to teach him. I don't want to give him musad. It's not my place to do it. You know why it's not my place to do it? Because I'm trying to be within my description of a wife. And in my description of a wife is not someone who chastises, someone who makes demands, someone who has expectations. That's not what my description of a wife is. What is my description as a wife? It's something that I'm going to get into next week. I'm going to get into next week. What is my description as a wife? What do I want to have in the drawer as a wife? Right? But in my description, in my definition, for me to now be upset and angry and chastised and pouty and whatever, it means that I'm leaving my fence and I'm going into his, expecting something from his. As we said, we don't have it at sonot from anyone else. We are dealing with us and us only. It's between us and Hashem. So expecting anything from my husband, wanting anything from him, is actually taking my ratzon and putting it on him. And that's not where I want to go with my avodah. With my avodah, I want to create something between me and Hashem. Hashem, this is what you put in front of me. This husband who started Kidush. How do I deal with the situation in the most laid back and smiling countenance and happy countenance that I could gather up to get on with the rest of the Friday night, to have a good and happy Friday night. You remember that I think you remember the story of last week, but I'm going to repeat it. Like the young boy who would come home every week, and his mother was always there for them, and she would serve him food, and she would talk to him. And one day he came home and the mother wasn't there, and that triggered for him, like for years on, everything that like things that were traumatic for him or that were difficult for him would always come back to that day when he came home and his mother was not home. Now, what happened to him? He had a picture in his head that the mother is always supposed to be there. And that picture sort of was worship. However, one day, God had a different picture for him. Why? Why did this different picture come? Like, why did this husband come in and start making food without asking his wife to come in? Hashem had a different picture because it's our opportunity to grow. It's this young man's opportunity to grow. Every day you're used to your mother. Now there's a different story because different abilities need to come out of us, right? Different abilities. And the ability to be surprised, the ability to solve our own problems. It's like, what strength within ourselves could we take out by coming face to face with another picture that Hashem put out for us? Another picture that Hashem put out for us. And I'm going to stop over here. And I'm actually, this class needs to be continued with a question that I asked previously that I was going to answer this, but there were just too many things that I wanted to teach. And the next class is going to start. What is the difference between a Torah and a picture, right? We always say that we need to hear what our mother's Torah is, our father's Torah is. What is the difference between a picture that we have in our head that we worship and that makes our life miserable because it makes us inflexible? If we have a picture of my husband should wait for me to make Kidush, it's the picture, it's etched in stone, and there's no budging it. And that is my Avodah Zarah. As opposed to, this is what Hashem put in front of me. I guess it's something I can handle. And there's a flexibility in me in a way I can handle it. So I hope this explained it a little bit more. I'm not going to be able to take questions now because my daughter is here and I just want to see my grandson. So I will continue from this. Bye, guys. I will see you, God willing, next week.